Today I'm going to show you how to sew an invisible zip into a skirt back, and I'm also going to show you how to bag out the facing around the zip, so we've got a facing instead of a waistband. I've already sewn my darts and I've neatened off my centre back seam allowances on the overlocker. So once you've done that, you can come back and put the skirt backs right sides together, and we're going to sew the centre back seam from the zipper notch down to the bottom of the hem. Now I've got my zipper notch marked. Before you sew your zip in, always check that it works. There's nothing worse than sewing it in and then discovering that it's jammed and broken. So give it a bit of a test. And then with figuring that out, I have to waste 2 centimetres at the bottom of the invisible zip to be able to sew it in using this method. So when you're figuring out where your zipper notch is, line it up so that you've got 1 centimetre at the top, which is your seam allowance for your facing, and then where your zipper notch starts, or where your seam starts, is 2 centimetres from the bottom of the zipper teeth opening. So we're starting off, we've got a 1 centimetre seam allowance for this, and just go in at your zipper notch there and do a back tack first. And then just sewing to the bottom of the hem, back tack again, and then we're ready to put our zip in. Now we're going to sew the zip into the centre back seam. So I've got my my skirt with the right side facing up. I'm going to get the zipper and place it with the right side facing down, and just choose one of the sides. I'm going to start on this side, and just place it so that the zipper tab at the top is sitting 1 centimetre below the top of the fabric, because you need to allow for your waist seam there. I'm just going to pop a pin in there to hold it. And then I'm just going to tack that in using the right side zipper foot. So I'll just quickly change that over. So just the plain zipper foot, that one there. And you can use the right or the left one. It just means on one of them you'll be coming from the top and the opposite on the other side when you're using it. So put that in there. And I'm just stitching down approximately in the middle of the zipper tape. I don't need to do a back tack because this is only tacking. And I'm just lining the zip up with the edge of the overlocking so that all the overlocking's covered. And sewing down, and when you get towards the bottom, just keep an eye out. You don't want to catch it into the other side, so just make sure you only stitch down to where that notch is. And then bring the other side up, and we're going to sew the other side, tack the other side in. Now the important thing here is to make sure that you've got this area down the bottom here near the notch sitting nice and flat. You don't want to accidentally misalign it and end up with a tuck down the bottom. So make sure that that's sitting nice and flat, and check it, lift it up and check it. Just pop a pin in there. And then just sew up the other side. Now you'll need to come to the top and make sure that that is lining up evenly at the top edge. And you could pop a pin in there if you wanted to. I'm just going to hold it with my finger and work my way up to the top. Okay, so that's our zip tacked in place. Now I can change over to the invisible zipper foot and sew the zip in. Put the invisible zipper foot on, and I'm just going to bring the needle thread down underneath it. If you just turn the hand wheel 1 full cycle and then just flick the thread out underneath, and then that's sitting out of the way. Now to sew the zip in properly, I need to pull the zipper tab down all the way and get it out of the way. And this is where that 2 centimeters wastage at the bottom comes into effect. We need to pull the zipper pull tab down past the bottom of our seam so that it's sitting right out of the way to enable us to then sew the zip in properly. So it's easiest to, I think it's easier to sew from the top. So just determine which side, which groove you need to go in. I'm sewing on the right hand side of the zipper teeth, so I need to make sure that the zipper teeth get placed into the left hand groove, and then the needle will go on the right hand side. Do a back tack, and then the zipper teeth should sit in that groove perfectly, and all you need to do is ensure that the tape in between is sitting nice and flat. Now when we get down to the bottom, we need to sew down as close as we can to where the seam starts. So sometimes I like to just put a pin in there just to make sure I don't go past it. If you go past that point, the stitching will get caught into the fabric and you'll need to unpick it. So just coming down and doing a back tack. The second side, I'm going to start at the top still. I just find it easier if you start there rather than down at the bottom where you've got all of this zip tab that gets in the way. So I'm coming in and doing the other side. Now the same thing, I need to make sure that I don't go past, I need to go as close as I can to where the stitching of the seam line is without actually catching the fabric. And really, you can only go so far, it won't let you go any further on this side anyway. The zip's in, so now I'm going to bring the zipper pull tab up to the top. So just get it started on the outside. Make sure you hold the bottom of the tape when you're pulling on it. And then you can flip it over, hold the bottom of the zipper tape again and pull it all the way to the top. And there's our zip in. One last thing to do is to anchor the bottom of the zip tape down onto the seam. So I've still got my plain zipper foot on. I'm just going to continue where that tacking is. I'm going to join up again to the end of that tacking with a back tack, and then just making sure that I line the centre of the zipper teeth onto the centre of the seam. I'm just going to stitch it down to the end. You can go all the way to the end or just finish a centimetre before. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Make sure it's sitting flat and then join it up to the tacking. What that does is it means that the zip will be held securely there when you're pulling the zipper open and closed, and it just helps to stop pressure and tension on that seam there. And that's our zip in. I'm going to show you how to bag out now around the invisible zip. We have a facing that is going to be stitched on to our waistline here. So we're using a facing instead of a waistband. And the first thing we're going to do is undo our zip, and we're going to sew our facing onto our zipper tape over on the centre back seam. Now when you cut your facings, it's a good idea to just put a notch on the centre back seam, because once you get this cut, it gets hard to tell. You can tell by the grain of the fabric which is your centre back seam. And if you pick it up and accidentally sew the side seam onto centre back, it won't work because it's shaped, the facing is shaped according to the dart in the back of the skirt. So I'm putting the facing right side down, so right sides together, and when I sew it, I'm going to flip it so that I can see where I've sewn my zip in here. Now when I sew it on, I actually have to pull the edge of the facing over 1 centimetre and stitch it down along here. The reason why I have to pull that 1 centimetre over is I want the zip, I want the facing, when it's finished, to sit nicely about 5 millimetres out from the centre back, so that it's not getting in the way and interfering with the operation of the zipper tape. So for it to be sitting back 5 millimetres, I've got to get rid of 5 millimetres in to centre back and then 5 millimetres back. So that's a total of 1 centimetre that I need to get rid of on the facing. So I'm going to line this up so that my waists are even, and the edge of the overlocking on the skirt is sitting 1 centimetre in from the edge of the facing. And I'm just going to use my zipper foot. I'll need to turn that round because I've got the right zipper foot on. So just start at the bottom on this side. And I'm going to sew from the edge of the facing about 5 millimetres in from where the centre back seam is. And as you can see, that's the facing on that side stitched down. I need to do the same thing on the other side. So find my centre back seam. I'm going to line it up, right sides together. Make sure that of course you fold the whole of the seam allowance of centre back out so it's sitting all flat. Line up your waist edges and pulling it across so that I'm getting rid of that centimetre on the facing. And just running down to the end. Oops, turn that, sorry. So that's what I've got happening there now. I've got both of my facings stitched on and bagged out around the zip there. So the last thing to do is to show you how to do this bagging out around the waistline. Now I'm going to finish off the facing by stitching it to the waistline of the skirt. Now I only have the skirt back here. I usually like to put the zip in and get this section finished off before I finish constructing the side seams of the skirt and also the side seams of the facing. I just find it's easier to do a zip in a flat section rather than constructing all of the skirt and then having to insert the zip when it's part of a circle. So what I can do, I'm folding the facing back so it's right sides together, and I'm folding the facing back and folding the zipper teeth into the edge of the area that I'm going to be sewing. So the zipper teeth are right on the fold of that, and the facing is pulled away from centre back. I'm just going to put a pin in there. And then line that up. I'm not going to sew all the way to the end because I need to be able to get in there and do my side seams later. So I'm just going to, and I need to put my normal presser foot on again. So just make sure that lines up. 1 centimetre seam allowance. And just sew across the top. When you get to the end, you want to sew across all of those layers right to the centre back fold, and that's what it looks like. The last thing then to do is to turn that out. And usually you can pull that out with your fingers. If you need to, you could put a blunt instrument in there, a screwdriver to help get it out. And you can see how that's really nicely bagged out there now, and the facing is sitting away from the zipper teeth, and it won't interfere with the working of the zip. It's just a really nice finish. The last thing then to do, of course, I'd be doing my other side the same way. And I might just do that, and we'll just run through it again. So on this side, right sides together, fold along the zipper teeth and pull the facing back away from centre back. And then when you're happy with that's where the stitch line of where I stitch the zip in is sitting right on the fold, you can pop a pin in there. And then make sure that the other edge is lined up. I'm going to stop sewing a couple of centimetres before the end. So it's 1 centimetre seam allowance. Make sure your waistline edges are even. And going right from the edge, you're actually sewing through the zip tape and all of the other layers. Make sure your darts that they're facing in towards centre back. And then we're just turning that out. And just pulling the zip tape, getting all of that out. Just be careful if you're using an implement that you don't put a hole in there. Then the last thing to do is just to understitch the facing. Now, understitching is a great way to finish any facing anywhere. What you do is you push all of the seam allowance towards the facing, and then you just get in as close as you can to the zip tape. You won't be able to get right in close because you need it all to sit flat. So just as close as you can. Back tape, and you just all of the seam allowance is underneath the facing there, and I'm just stitching on the edge of the facing, so I'm edge stitching or pin stitching, and just making sure that I'm getting all of the facing out from that. And what that does is it just forces the facing back to the inside so that you don't see any of the facing on the outside of the garment. It's just a really good finish, and then you can give that a press. You can, if you want, trim some of that bulk back before you turn it out. So you could just trim away the top of the zipper tape. It's just making that a little bit bulky, and that will then sit a bit flatter. And of course, if you were using the right colour thread, I've used black so that you can see it more easily on the calico. If you had the right colour thread there, you wouldn't even notice that understitching.